Welcome, everyone. Please be seated. Welcome, everyone, to this event about sustainable water. And I'm very happy to see so many people in the room. Unfortunately, there's one missing, and that is the Crown Princess. She was unfortunately not available. It was not possible for her to come to this session, but I should say hi to all of you from her. So I have the privilege to open this session, very important water session about sustainable water. We have a very experienced, competent panel sitting here. We will get back to that. And of course, the Green Strategic Partnership sets a unique frame for the collaboration on water, which is something I'm sure we will talk more about in a minute. And I'm really looking forward to this next hour or so. But first, I will give the word to Christian Wind, who is Permanent Secretary in Denmark in the Ministry of Environment, and he will say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Emil. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. It's a great pleasure for me to take part in the opening of this important session on sustainable and reliable water. In Denmark, we are grateful for our long and fruitful cooperation with India on water, and we take pride in our many partnerships with your beautiful country. We have partnerships on city level, as between Aarhus and Udaipur, on the state level, as a cooperation with Rajasthan, and on the national level, like the Green Strategic Partnership, as well as the strategic sector cooperation between the Danish Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Jal Shakti of India. As you know, Denmark is a small country, and most states in India far surpass Denmark in size. But while our country may be small, we still want to make a big impact through innovation, know-how, sustainable solutions, and of course, by close partnerships. In this way, India and Denmark have a lot to offer each other. India has high ambitions for the future. You want to develop your water sector and improve lives of millions of people in India. India won't settle for the status quo. No, you are full of dreams and visions. You are eager to make big changes and to make them fast. On the other hand, Denmark has spent decades investing in our water sector. Today we are proud to call ourselves global leader in this field. We have reduced water consumption by 40% since 1976, while at the same time have seen a growth in the GDP. Our water loss is kept at a minimum, non-revenue water level at around 5 to 7%. And we are experts in the field of not just cleaning wastewater, but also using it as a resource to create energy and extract nutrients for farming. But all this didn't happen overnight. No, it happened because we, like India, never settled for status quo. We have always tried to improve, to set new goals, and to develop new solutions. And we still do so today. For example, we are now working hard to fulfill our next goal, to become the first country in the world with a water sector that is entirely climate and energy neutral. But as a small country, we also want and need to learn from others. And we want to develop deep and fruitful partnerships where we can come up with new solutions and apply them at a scale. Therefore, I'm very happy that water is one of the key pillars in the green strategic partnership between our two countries. During Honourable Prime Minister Modi's visit to Denmark in May last year, we signed a letter of intent on safe and secure water with the Honourable Minister for geo-political. And at the IWA Water Conference in Copenhagen last year, we had the participation of the Honourable Indian Water Minister. There, our two countries signed a MOU with the focus on effective water management. These commitments are important because to really make a difference when it comes to developing our water sectors, technology and know-how is not enough. We also need another crucial component, and that is the superpower of cooperation, the ability to work together between government and businesses, between the public and the private sector, and especially between countries. In Denmark, it is our experience that good cooperation is just as important as the pipes, the pumps, and the programming that gets the water flowing. So if we want to deliver on the promises made to the next generations, if we want to come up with new solutions and make our countries and communities more resilient against the effects of climate change, then we need to work together, share our knowledge, and help each other develop new technologies. And I am certain that in the years to come, our partnerships will be a shining example on the difference you can make when working together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christian, for stating out that cooperation and sharing knowledge and technology is very important for us to succeed on this travel. We were supposed to have a little speech from the ministry, Jarl Shakti, I think he's pronounced, but he was not available to come. So I will suggest we get a little photo session before Finn Mortensen will take you through some questions, if that's okay with you. So if you can just spend 1-2 minutes on a little photo session, and then we continue with the debate in the panel. Thank you.
We're all set. Good afternoon. Welcome to the panelists. Welcome to you in the audience. All esteemed guests, I'm very happy to introduce today's panel discussion where we have invited representatives and stakeholders from both the Indian side and the Danish side to provide us with their thoughts and outlook on the Indo-Danish Partnership for Implementation of India's water missions. My name is Finn Mortensen, and I will act as today's moderator. I'm the executive director of an organization called State of Green in Denmark. It's a Danish not-for-profit organization, public-private partnership in itself. We were set up back in 2008, and our job is to showcase and share Denmark's green transition. We provide a global platform for the Danish companies and the solutions that have taken Denmark to the place where it is now. Finally, as an organization, we also foster relations between international and Danish stakeholders and decision makers like yourselves within sustainability to contribute to the green transition internationally. Now, turning to India, strong economic growth over the past decade and a positive outlook for the coming years is expected to lead to a drastic increase in India's water demand. I think that's known to all of us. I'll do my best to guide us through today's panel prior to concluding the panel discussion with a short summary. But first of all, thank you all for being here today. And I should point out that we must end by 4 o'clock, sharp at the latest, because we have somebody who's going to the airport directly from here. As you also will know, Denmark and India already work closely together on water issues. You heard that from the Permanent Secretary in his speech just a few minutes ago. And following the signing of the Green Partnership Agreement in 2021, a 3-year work plan focusing on the Jal Jeevan mission was agreed. And there are several other areas of cooperation. Danish companies and organizations are very active here. Some companies have production facilities in India, and the Danish Export Credit Fund and the Danish Investment Fund for Developing Countries also provide financing. And looking at the national India level, the CII is also very active. It has a national committee on water, which engages very concretely and actively with government and works to create not only awareness, but also discuss innovative and cost-effective technology solutions and best practices. That's what we can also discuss today, I hope. Now, turning to the panel, I will invite you all to introduce yourself briefly, give us your initial thoughts on how Denmark and India can work together on sustainable water solutions that contribute to the implementation of India's water missions. You'll have approximately 4 minutes each, so don't worry, time doesn't go that fast when it comes to the point. I think we're going to head up with Mr. H.P. Nanda, who is the Executive Vice President and Divisional CEO for the water utility within Grundfos. And each of you obviously also should tell us a little bit about your own company. So HP, please take over.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you, Finn. Let me address 3 different points for starting this conversation. Number 1, are we all able to visualize the implications of climate change, what it means for India? Then second, I have been to Denmark 20 times in the last 10 months, and I have closely seen the country and how it operates. What are some of my maybe 3 key learnings from Denmark, which will be relevant for solving India's challenge in water? And lastly, 3 uniquenesses of India that you have to keep in mind if you have to solve India's challenges in India. I don't have to speak about the climate change impacting the world. The flood in Germany a few years ago, to the recent flood in Pakistan, to the drought in California, or at our own home here in India, the implications of climate change are pretty clear. But what does it truly mean? It means it is going to have more drought in some places, more flooding in some places. What does more drought mean? We're going to transport clean water for much longer distance to provide water access to people when they need it, where they need it, and how do we do it sustainably? If we talk about flood, we're going to create a lot more wastewater, and how do we handle that wastewater and take it and dispose it in a manner that is more sustainable? And that has implications of how we solve this problem for India, recognizing we will have these implications as part of climate change. I have been to Denmark so many times, and there are 3 key learnings for me which would be relevant for this conversation. Number 1, that's a small country with 5.4 million people, but most of the technologies that country has, they're global leaders. So that means having technologies ready to be able to solve the challenges anywhere in the world, that country has really a big contribution. And if you saw the recent study, that small country ranks one of the top 10 countries for innovation in 2023 global study of country rankings on innovation. So leadership in technology and the leadership in innovation will allow the country to continue to make an impact around the world and of course in India. The second, ecosystem partnership. Complex problems like water cannot be solved only by technology. You need to have regulators, technology companies, execution companies, consulting companies, investing companies, financing companies, all of them together. And that ecosystem partnership that truly exists in Denmark is probably something which is critical, because unless you can really solve some problems which are systemic, which are societal, at the ecosystem level, difficult to see the results. And last, there is a saying in English, you cannot cook the rice by just talking. You have to cook it. And what does that mean? We cannot talk about solving sustainability issues unless you have really solved it yourself. So in 2011, when the Copenhagen, the capital of Denmark, was having a massive flooding issue, and that city today is one of the most sustainable and thriving cities of the world. So they have gone through the pain of what it truly means to solve sustainability challenges, and we can take the learnings from that instead of reinventing ourselves how to do it. Lastly, this brings me to the uniquenesses of India. India is different. We are not going to have the 5.4 million countries' learnings to get used for a 1.4 billion people. The scale and size of India is very different. So 3 key learnings. Number 1, many multinational companies don't realize the price-value equation in India is very different. If you cannot solve the price-value equation right, it is difficult to be successful here in India. So whether you redesign your manufacturing, you redesign your value chain, but you have to get your price-value equation right to be successful. Second, you have to thrive in chaos. When people come to India, if they do not know how to thrive in chaos, you will struggle. And probably 30, 40 years ago, what was a challenge to be in chaos, that is the biggest strength of India, because the world is going to be more chaotic. So if you can thrive in chaos in India, you can thrive in chaos anywhere in the world, and I think that uniqueness of India really helps it. And lastly, the execution in India requires multiple stakeholder management. You have federal government, you have state government, you have local execution authorities. If you do not design your solutions to be able to really manage the multiple stakeholders, it's difficult to do it. My last 30 seconds, what we have done. I tell you honestly, what we have done from Grundfos is probably a tip of the iceberg, because we have our own set of challenges. Of course, now we solve water access to 10 million people by having 50,000 solar power pumps in the locations where water was never possible. I met our partner in Kashmir, from Kashmir yesterday. We have installed a pump that operates at a negative 30 degrees C and produces water, and the village saw water for the first time in 80 years. But what is 10 million people per 1.4 billion population country? We have a miles to go. Or the same thing on flood. We are having a lot of discussions with some of the largest cities of India, how to make them more resilient from a flood control standpoint so that they can be well prepared for the future. So thank you.
Thank you very much, HP. And now over to Mette Vestergaard, who is CEO of another global Danish company, DHI. Mette, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And hello, everybody. And what an honor to be here and to take part in this session and the whole meeting, these 3 days. I have been really, really impressed to see how much India has progressed over the last years. I'm very impressed by the ambition of India, and it leads me to say that chaos is probably a prerequisite for progress, and that's what India has succeeded with. So very impressed about that. I represent DHI. We are global. a research and a technology and advisory company. And we have worked to solve the world's water challenges for 60 years, and we've actually been in India for about 30 years. We started out with a handful of passionate wave modelers, and today we are 1,100 people who are all specialists in water modeling and in water environments. And we take all this brain power and capture that in our software. It is called Mike by DHI. Some of you will probably know it or maybe even have used it. In India, we are deeply involved in many different things. We are involved in a wide range of water resource management and disaster reduction projects, and we're focusing on using our water modeling skills and our technology with the capacity building that is needed to establish a sustainable, resilient solution. And of course, we have several hundred users of our software. Our aim is to collaborate really closely in order to achieve sustainable and resilient solutions, because we believe these solutions are the foundation for economical growth and also social stability. And we believe that India has the power to actually drive, not only for India, but for the entire world, these things. Partnerships, of course, is key. And one of the very current initiatives is the outcome, or one of the outcomes from Prime Minister Modi's visit to Denmark last year in May, where both countries agreed on establishing a center of excellence for smart water technology and one for smart water resource modeling. And we obviously strongly support these initiatives and really look forward to the implementation. We believe one of the keys to speed up the implementation is to work together on digitalization of data and of tools, because it's one of the many ways to achieve the very important water missions in India. In DHI, we have for many years focused on digitalization with the aim of increasing the efficiency of the water sector. And for instance, we have during these 2 days gone to visit a very advanced wastewater treatment plant. And this is one of the areas where digitalization can actually make a huge difference. We have done a research in DHI that shows that if we apply digital solutions based on some of the knowledge we have in Denmark to the entire world, then we will reduce CO2 emissions by a lot of percentage, about 20 to 30%, so it's quite significant. I believe success on projects in India to a large extent is based on the implementation on digital solutions. In addition, I think we can also work together to improve the speed of implementation by using this combination of India's scale and Danish skills, though I would say I have a lot of colleagues in India, so I'm very exposed to India's skills as well, and I must say I'm deeply impressed with the skills of people in India also. But I think what we can do is to speed up by starting small with local pilot and then learn from these pilot and then build capacity and then scale fast across India. So let's not wait too long. We actually have the skills and the ambition, and starting with pilots would be a way to learn and then get scale very fast. Last but not least, I think over the years we have experienced a very strong and fruitful collaboration with all of our counterparts in India. And I'm sure this is a very strong foundation for future success. I think we all know and appreciate that a foundation for success in any partnership is trust. And that's what we are building together in sessions like these and in the visits between our two countries and in the exchange of colleagues and people in our two countries. So I would like to end this introduction by thanking the organizers for hosting this very important event. And I see it as a means to further strengthen the collaboration between our two countries. And I believe we actually can indeed achieve a lot together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mette. And chaos, a prerequisite for progress. I like that one. So we can build on that in a little while. Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce the next panelist, Hans Engrup, who is CEO of a company called Leninco. I think you started it yourself, and you have a decade-long career within international finance. Hans, you're up now.
Thank you very much, Finn, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I made a small paper here. I'll make it short, so hopefully we can also have some good discussion with the audience. I'm Hans Engrup. I've been working as a water consultant in India for at least 20 years. Actually, I started in the 90s in Bangladesh. So this part of the world I've been so much. Right now I'm part-time in India and part-time in Denmark. This is a fantastic place to work. And I must again congratulate what has been achieved here with this partnership. So the embassy is fantastic with the work you have done. CII, you have set up this. I must congratulate this. I really feel emotional when I think about what you have achieved here. That was my background. Besides from being a water consultant, I'm also, we are helping a Danish company, a startup company, to bring in data as a service. And what is that? So I would like to highlight 3 areas. One is management. The second part is data. And the last is people. So let me just put a few words on that. So I have the privilege now to work a lot with World Bank and ADB in project preparation. And even though I'm an engineer, I come with a technology background, I must admit that very often technology is the least thing which worries. A lot of many other things which need to be to look into in management. Regulation is a big issue. One thing is to have vision and ideas in federal government, but you need to bring it out to the states. Not only that, you have to go all the way out to the district magistrates, and in the end, Gram Panchayat, they will have to implement a lot of these things. And especially here with the Jal Jeevan mission, they have a huge task, these Gram Panchayat. They're not used to be a kind of a water utility, but they're supposed to be that. That's a huge challenge. I could mention a lot more, but we also need to give you a bit time to come with your views. Data. See, all this management has to be done on an informed way. So to me, there's a great opportunity to digitalize the water sector. And honestly, coming from Denmark, we are not world champion in the digital water sector. For many reasons, mainly because there's a lot of conservatism in the Danish water sector. Now it took decades to be excellent in doing operations, planning, and so on in the water sector. So you will not throw that overboard with some new IT fancy things. So there's a hesitance there for good reasons. This is where we can learn from India. Digital India. India is really a front runner in many ways when it comes to digital. What I find, and this is where the link comes to the management, having digital data, having real-time data gives immense new opportunities in how you manage things. And this is where the partnership comes in. Let's work together on doing some radical, innovative, new procedures on how to manage things using digital data. And this is a joint journey. This is not something one can learn from the other or opposite. This is something we can develop in partnership. I really look forward to that. The last thing, the people.
It's more than a minute now.
Okay, sorry.
No.
But the people, it starts with our country leaders.
Yeah.
I think it's fantastic what they have achieved. I will take it to the next level also. The administrators, the chief engineers, I worked a lot with them. They are under immense pressure also here in India to do that. It goes all the way down to the different levels. I would also like to highlight the good people I'm working with. people who are traveling from Rajasthan, coming all the way from West Bengal, because I've said now is the time, now it's happening, and they're coming. So I think there's a lot of enthusiasm, and thank you very much, dear friends, and let's move on in the journey. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hans. And last but certainly not least, Mr. Rainesh Chopra, who is Global Head of Business Development at VA Tech Wabag. Please.
Thank you, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to be here. See, VA Tech Wabag is a water and wastewater management company. We are globally headquartered in Chennai, in India, the southern part of India. We operate in 4 continents and around 30 countries. So we have a wide range of technologies already available. But maybe in the later part, I'll come to what are we looking for in terms of future collaboration. So having executed projects even in Swiss for removal of micropollutants to, treating some of the toughest effluents in hydrocarbons, metals and mining, I think we have almost technologies, but our core strength is a process integration to give the right solutions. But looking at India, when we talk about, water management and what are the challenges, I think the key thing is if we can have the learnings of integration of water and wastewater management in the country, and if there are learnings which we can imbibe and incorporate, it will go a long way. There's a lot of government outlay for implementing projects, be it Amrut, be it Jal Jeevan Mission, whether it is National Mission for Clean Ganga, River Conservation Department. So there are so many of them which are already there. Now, key thing is what the government is today focusing on, and we have already been doing it for almost 1.5 decades in India, is the resource recovery model. In the wastewater, all the 3 elements, water, gas, as well as the sludge or biosolids, as we normally call it, we need to reuse all this. Because today, in urban areas, whenever a new tender is coming, we have no landfill made available to us for disposing of sludge. We cannot, just flare the gas because it is not in line with our sustainable goals and leads to a lot of GHG emissions. And obviously, water is definitely scarce as far as India is concerned, given the huge volume what we require, especially for a growing economy, where both on the industrial and agriculture front, it's increasing. Urbanization by 2030 is going to be maybe at least 50% more than what currently we have. So there's a lot of stress. So integration of these, water and wastewater management is what we are currently looking at. We already recycle around 2,500 million liters of treated wastewater currently. It is being used for industrial purposes. It's being used for agriculture, as well as for recharging of certain aquifers or giving it back to the freshwater bodies from where we are withdrawing the water. So this is something we have been doing it and will continue to do it. Earlier we used to have power neutral plants where we were generating energy from biogas to make zero withdrawal from the thermal energy which is coming through grid. Today, we are looking at converting it into bio-CNG. There's a huge market there. There is a big gap between the wastewater which we generate and what we are treating currently. So when we look at collaboration, I think there are a few things which I, identified. One is definitely, bio-CNG. The other is, generating hydrogen from treated wastewater. It's going to be a big thing. Today it looks, not a reality as far as India is concerned, but I know of certain developments where we are getting a lot of inquiries for desalination from green hydrogen players. But the reality is this treated wastewater is going to be used for generation of hydrogen and use of oxygen in the wastewater treatment. I think you already mentioned about digitization. We are already working on that. We have almost fully automated plants today. We run plants sitting here. I can operate through my mobile, a 500 kilometers deep inside a desert in Oman. I can operate the plant from here. So we have done a lot. But now we are looking at fully digitization. We have a huge data available to us because we operate around 71 utilities. So there's no dearth of data. So it's all the use of artificial intelligence where we are looking for collaboration. Definitely non-revenue water, there are huge leakages in the municipalities here. Maybe the real figure is always 50% and above. There's a lot of smart water systems which can be implemented here. Now, in terms of energy efficiency of our current systems, if there are any new technologies which can help us reduce our GHG emissions in line with our ESG and sustainable goals, we welcome any new technologies which can help us. And we do a lot of desalination in India, in Middle East, and even in northern part of Africa. So there are two things which we have identified. One is how do we further optimize the energy part, and the second is on the recovery, because most of the time it is membrane based. So today, currently, the recovery is 45 to 48%. So if there are new technologies which can help us, improve the recoveries, is something we find there's a huge potential in India for collaboration as well as outside India where we operate. Thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much. And now let's move into a discussion. And please, if you feel like it, comment on what some of the others have said during their interventions. But just to set the scene, close to 20% of the world's population lives in India today. You only have, as far as I have read, about 4% of the water resources, and in a few years' time, the demand for water will exceed supply by 50%. It's a daunting task, and you could argue it's impossible. Where do we start? Lots of things are going on already. We have been talking about capacity building, skills, etc. But how would you define a successful Indo-Danish partnership in the water area, in your view? HP Nanda, would you start out?
Thank you, Pin. Yesterday we had a session, and I personally believe it would be wonderful for us if we take one city of India, bring all the stakeholders together, and define what success could look like for that city, and work together in a holistic problem solving. And if you're able to showcase that result in one city of India, then we can create the traction to really create a multiplier effect of going and replicating different parts of the country. So just to talk about, think about a city, now you're all thinking about what can we do? I just wanted to leave with maybe some thoughts for you. We strongly believe today there is enough of technology. You can open the tap, you will get hot water in nanoseconds. You don't have to waste water. You think about a high-rise building, that's like an individual home. Now you think about a high-rise building. Today, the amount of pressure we get in the pumping system from the basement of the building, and we throttle them to reduce the pressure because we want enough of pressure in the top floor of the building, versus having distributed pumping system with smart sensors and technology. There are 2 floors of the building, nobody is working, there is nobody moving, the pump is not going to work. And we could have 70 to 80% lower energy in that one building. You replicate this to a city level, like in city of New Delhi. You can map in it digitally with all the sensors, with all the data. You'll be able to see your vulnerable points. You'll see the leakages and can optimize that. We can reduce energy. We can reduce water loss. We can reduce non-revenue water. And you can create really a role model example to replicate in other parts of India.
So one concrete example. Mette, would you add on? Yes,
and it's certainly, just as you say, it's really a daunting task ahead of us, not only for India, but for the entire world. The UN has predicted that there will be water scarcity in up to 1/3 of the world's population in 2050, which is why they're also calling for a water congress in March. And I hope to see a lot of you there, because it is really, really a serious issue. One of the solutions, though, is to be much more efficient in and be able to forecast in how we use water. That's where the water resource management is so important, that we are able to model based on our experience of the past and predict the future based on when is it going to be a drought, should we slow down water usage now. So we have this ability actually already, and we have so much data just like HB is saying, we have so much data available, and we can actually use this data to smartly predict the future. It won't solve the entire problem, but it will definitely mean that we'll be much better at using the scarce resources that we have if we apply the data, the decision support system, and the artificial intelligence into then transforming that into changed behavior in how we use water. So then that could make a huge difference to this, as I said, daunting task ahead of us.
Hans, you wanted to comment on it? You have your... Oh, okay.
No, I should also remember to say that I owe a lot to DSI, being 25 years with DSI, and I was so blessed to be team leader in West Bengal here recently, which kind of illustrate what I'm going to say about some more integrated management. I think that's really a key. There is, yes, there's scarcity, but it's also about sharing water in the right manner, understanding who are the stakeholders, and make some fair regulations. And that is something which is lacking, for sure. One of the things which DSI did in the project in West Bengal was to identify some problems with salinity ingress, and that's also related to climate change. Now, most of the world population lives in coastal areas, and Kolkata is just one of these places, and they have huge problems with salinity intrusion. And that's a good example. There's a PhD water utility taking water from the river. And then there's a Kolkata Port Trust. They're interested in dredging up to Kolkata so they can increase transport, increase business there. Two conflicts. If you dredge, then you let the salt water into the river. So this has to be managed. But they're not talking today. So this is a good example, and it has to be done in informed way. Start with data, use DSI's model to see how it works, how it all fits together, get a dialogue, put people together, make a committee maybe, and then regulate it. So that's, in my view, one of the key things, and that's why I come back to this management, data, people. Sorry.
Yes. No, that's okay. Mr. Chhabra, would you have anything to add on that one?
See, what you asked is about a successful and ideal Indo-Danish collaboration, a successful one. Since I operate in Europe also, in countries like Austria, Swiss, Germany, we develop a lot of technologies there. Even within the group, bringing it to India is always a challenge.
Yeah.
I think the key thing, what I would look at, if I have to make an Indo-Danish relationship and collaboration successful, is that, whatever solutions, learnings you have, before we even decide to implement, we need to study the Indian ecosystem. The kind of challenges we have, the kind of infrastructure gaps we have, they are much different compared to a country like Denmark. And then come to a conclusion jointly that what is the adaptability of the learnings and the solutions and the knowledge which a Danish company is bringing. And maybe we'll have to tweak it a bit. It cannot be as it is what's implemented in Denmark. And that can definitely, make any, relationship and collaboration very, very successful.
That's a good point. I would like to continue in that vein and ask you to explain also this difference between the rural areas and the cities. There's a big difference here in their needs. Perhaps you could elaborate a bit on that.
Yeah, I think when I look at urban areas, probably there is a big gap in demand and supply, whether it is water or the wastewater generated. So I started my talk by saying that we need to integrate that as far as urban areas is concerned. When it comes to rural areas, I think one of the major challenges we have is the biggest guzzler. Often industry is blamed in this country for using a lot of water. But the real guzzler is the agriculture sector, and our water use efficiency in the rural sector is very, very low. Secondly, I think HP Nanda is here, so there is a lot of states don't even charge you for electricity. Yeah. So there is no metering on how much water I'm drawing, how much I'm using. I often have seen and witnessed, not now, but maybe it's outdated by a decade. In rural areas, it's flooding, irrigation is done by flooding the fields because energy is free. The moment you put a pump, there is no regulation today to curtail the withdrawals of the groundwater. So these are the challenges we have. And obviously, a lot of Danish companies have solution to that.
HP, do you want to elaborate on?
Thank you. I think Rajni said so well, but I feel the cities have a challenge of, they don't have the access challenge. The access challenge of water is all in the rural areas. How do you solve the water access? And of course, how do we handle the agriculture, which is a big guzzler of water now in an efficient way? But in the cities, we have different challenges. It is about integration of drinking water and wastewater management, but also the non-revenue water that you talk about losses, the pipes, where the losses happen, that's a city issue. Infrastructure, in many of the cities, our infrastructure is old, and how do we modernize them? And yesterday I was hearing a factoid. Every minute, 3 people in India are moving to a city. Every minute. And in next 9 years, the number of people moving to big cities of India would be like the whole population of United States. And you look at the amount of stress that is going to generate on the public infrastructure of the cities of India and keeping up with the demand is going to be really big challenge. How do you solve it?
Maiden, would you add something to that?
So I think we talk a lot about India as one thing, and obviously India is one country, but there are a lot of differences across India, which is also what my panel colleagues here are highly talking a lot about. So back to what does a successful partnership look like? I think it's really important I have this thought of starting small and scaling fast. So I think it's very important to, whether it's a city or whether it's a rural area, or whether it's another small area, village, then apply the technology, digitalize, learn, build the capacity, and understand what does it mean, what does it look like, and how can we scale it fast? Because we cannot apply the technology immediately all over India. It's not possible. It wouldn't make sense, but we can test it out in smaller areas, learn from that, build the capacity, and then scale it fast to the rest.
Good. Now, once we are there, you will obviously need some funding or financing, and hence you have been dealing with that for a very long time. In your view, is the necessary financing available today, for instance, to carry out such lighthouse projects or whatever, which can be showcased and built on afterwards?
Do I have to be diplomatic? No.
No?
I can be, straightforward.
Frank.
No, I see Dutch money is coming in big way, bilateral support, and it's much more attractive to work with Dutch technology because they also bring the funding. I don't want to say anything more. I don't see that much in Denmark. So that is a challenge in my view. There could be some small pilot funding of projects. It will make it much easier. It's not more than that, but just to open the doors. That could really help.
Mette, do you have a take on it?
On what, sorry?
Would you have a take on the financing, the need for financing?
Yeah,
or?
yeah, I think what is really important is to connect the dots, so to speak. The financing obviously is extremely important. There is actually quite a lot of money pouring into this area. We are not the only ones in this room who think this is incredibly important, not just for India, but for the entire world. I was very impressed with the speeches this morning that also focused on that aspect. So, but it's important to connect the dots between the funding, between those who can provide the solutions and those who need the solutions. And that can sometimes be quite a stretch to actually do that. And I think that's an area where we can probably all work on speeding up the connectivity between these three parties in order to be successful.
Okay, I'll pass on to you, Mr. Chopper, before I hands for a short comment.
Thank you. See, as I just now said, the government has a huge outlay currently in the country on water and wastewater management. And the challenge is the speed at which we are able to implement. There are different challenges while implementing, and we are not able to fully utilize the finance which is already earmarked for the sector. Now, when we talk about bringing export-oriented finance, I think one of the challenges in India is that most of our clients, they do not accept that X percentage of your material or technology or goods and services will come as part of the package. Now, I do business in other countries where this export finance comes from Europe, it is coming from Japan, and so many other countries where the governments are willing to accept that. Somewhere it is 30%, somewhere it is more than 50%, they are willing to accept. So that is one challenge which is there in India when we want to bring this export finance. So that is where more engagement is needed with the government, the urban local bodies. And obviously, when you are bringing the export finance, the repayment, generally most of the financing institutions, they want a guarantee from the federal government or they need a sovereign guarantee. Barring a few municipalities, they do not have that kind of a financial strength today to accept that financing and repay in time. So that's my observation on this.
Okay. Hans, for a short, because I have one more question and we need to, yes.
Very short. I think you also touched a bit upon it, Mette, working with others and not working in an isolated way. World Bank, ADB, Asian Development Bank, JICA, very, very dominant in assisting in developing policies and programs and so on. So I think it's already happening, but to make sure that we have a close dialogue and coordination with the big banks, I think that's a really wise way to go ahead.
Good. The last question, and I'll give you each about a minute to answer in order to keep the time. Denmark is a very small country, 5.8 million people. We have some very export-oriented companies who are very good on a global scale, but still they are up against competitors of major sizes which we cannot, which are outnumbering us. On Friday and Saturday, German Chancellor Scholz visited Delhi with a big business delegation. I guess they were here for the same purposes. So what is our key advantage point from a Danish point of view? I'll ask of you three Danes first, and then I'll end up with Mr. Chopra to take a look at Denmark. Hans.
Is there somebody from the audience who want to say something? No, as I don't really see any difference whether it's from one or the other place. It is, personal people, their personal relations,
Yeah.
yes. And I think the kind of energy I have seen the last couple of days, if we can bring that into action, that would be fantastic.
Excellent. HP?
Thank you. I think we need to pick our battles. That means pick the sectors where Denmark is super strong and India can really get advantage by having strong partnership with Denmark. Whether it is water technology, renewable energy, the spaces where really Denmark is super strong, globally highly respected, and it will be a natural attraction for India, why Denmark is a compelling choice.
Mette? Can we make a difference?
Yes, I'm sure we can make a difference. I think we are already making a difference, and I think India is making a difference also to Denmark. I think we are influencing each other, and I think it all comes down to partnership and people relations and trust and the ability to work together. So I think that's where the real difference lies. I mean, there's a lot of technology, a lot of pipes, a lot of pumps everywhere, but it really comes down to how people interact with each other. And I think these days, and the past couple of years, we have seen a significant increase in the collaboration between our two countries. And I think that's the real unique difference.
That's good to hear some optimism. Mr. Chopra?
I think definitely India has a potential for, absorbing a lot from Denmark. See, couple of things I'd like to highlight here is, we mentioned briefly about capacity building here. I think this is one area where we do not have, very highly trained, skilled force to manage this infrastructure. Maybe as a corporate, I may be training 2,000-3,000 people every year. But on the whole, we classify it as green jobs. And in the process, when you get engaged there, you develop a lot of relationships with state governments, urban local bodies, central government. And probably that's where, you can offer your solutions too. Because in India, I believe relationship is a very, very key, not a key thing, not only in India, but in a lot of other countries also where I have worked. So that could be one way of, engaging with your potential customers. And secondly, having a strategic local partner. I operate in so many countries. I think if I'm not there in a country for at least 15, 20 years, I will always have a local strategic partner. So that's the key. So choosing the right partner, I think, we can bring in anything. Third, when I'm offering a solution, I have come across some Danish companies only. They've been struggling here. We have also tried to collaborate with them. See, it's not just about today, our evaluation system and government tenders has changed. So cost effectiveness has to be the key. It's not just about the capex anymore. If you have a superior product or a technology, you can definitely sell it in India. But then it should give you certain benefits over a period of time. So based on capex and opex, the evaluation is done. So that is something which, if Danish companies are a little flexible, probably they have very good products. I know a few of them. So we can definitely, look forward to association and bringing it to India. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So cost effectiveness is definitely one of the key parameters. Time flies in such great company, and we have reached the end of our panel discussion. Thank you to all the participants for sharing your thoughts and your knowledge and insights, and for contributing to this dialogue. I hope you have enjoyed it, being on the panel, and I also hope that you in the audience have enjoyed it. So thank you very much, and let's give a big hand to the panel.
for the session. I request everyone that session 4 Green Urban Infrastructure is happening here. I request any delegate who would like to attend Recalibrating Global Value Chains. It's happening in Kamal Hall, just besides this hall. We are starting this session in 5 minutes. I request all the delegates who are standing kindly take seats. Once again, good evening, everybody. We are starting with a session on green and urban infrastructure. Investing in green infrastructure is critical for a green and sustainable future as well as greater economic prospects. Cities can lead the fight against climate change by investing in nature-based solutions and measures to protect sustainability, manage, and restore biodiversity and ecosystems. Given this background, not taking much time of everybody's, the session will explore ways forward for the India-Europe partnership on sustainable and green urban development and discuss how enhanced cooperation in this area can mutually help the regions in meeting their climate change commitments. With this, I would like to call Mr. Gurjot Bhatia, Managing Director, Project Management, India, Southeast Asia, Middle East and Africa, CBRE. He would be moderating the session along with Mr. Jose Antonio Fernandez Uson, Director of the Mixed Use Ecosystem Division, IDOM, Spain. We welcome you, sir. We have Mr. Robert Deman, Executive Vice President and Head, Smart Infrastructure, Siemens India. We welcome you, sir. Mr. Pierre de Rancourt de Memeren, Managing Director, COWI India. We welcome you, sir. We have Ms. Nina Fenton, Head of Regional Representation, South Asia, European Investment Bank, EU. We welcome you, ma'am. Mr. Ravichandran Purushothaman, President, Danfoss, India. With this, I would like Mr. Gurjot Bhatia to take over the entire session. Thank you, sir.
Just checking. Can you hear me at the back? Big hall, so just checking. Good evening, everyone. Feels great to be here with such a diverse group sitting on my left and right. Pretty excited with what's to follow in the next 45 minutes to 60 minutes. Had a good interaction outside with the group. A lot of stuff to talk about. We'll try to pack it in as much as possible in the next few minutes. I want to start by putting this session into context in terms of why are we here? Why are we here to talk about green infrastructure, urban infrastructure, with a specific reference to how Europe and India can collaborate and learn from each other, and what are the good things that we can pick up from what our counterparts and partners in Europe have to offer and teach us and guide us on. And they're here, as you will hear from some of the panelists. And what is it that India is going through, which the world can learn from as well. So I will, not being the expert on this, I will keep whatever I say very brief. And all I want to say is that the world is more connected than it ever was, whether it is in terms of sustainability, whether it is in terms of technology, what goes around, in terms of the social structure, etc. And I'll just pick up one example, which was COVID. And we saw that COVID as a pandemic, it was able to travel all around the world and affect the entire world. There was no part of the world which was not affected because of the connectivity that the world has now, which it did not have, say, 50 or 100 years ago. Same is when it comes to the aspect of sustainability, green, net zero, and all those kind of things. We can never imagine any part of the world which stays in a silo and undergoes acute climatic change and it doesn't affect the rest of the world. The planet is one as a whole. We cannot ever say that if there is something which is going on in one part of the world which is not in line with the sustainability goals, it will not affect another part of the world. So that is why, that is the reason I find very compelling that we must have this conversation, how the two large geographical areas, which is namely India, which is arguably now the world's, or going to be the world's largest populous country, ever, and Europe, which is a conglomeration of more than 25, 26 countries, very diverse again,
must collaborate, must talk to each other, must learn from each other. So here we are today. And the format that we're going to follow is that I'm going to invite each of my panelists one by one to talk about their experiences. They come from very diverse backgrounds. I will not go and introduce everyone right off the bat. So I'll do that as we go along the list. Everybody will contribute, will talk about what do they think about the subject of green infrastructure from their perspective. We'll spend about half the session on that, and then we'll have another half of the session. And towards the end, I'll be more than happy to take some questions if any of you have them. So I'll start with Tono Fernandez, my apologies. He's the Director of Mixed Use Ecosystem Division, IDOM Spain. So when you hear these words, green urban infrastructure, what comes to mind? What is your take on this? Why do you think this is important in the urban context? Yeah.
Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for inviting us to this conference. First, one nuance I think we should include in the definition two words. First is blue, because blues, all the blue infrastructures are part of this green infrastructures when we are working. Second, I think it's good for the to analyze the situation we've got today is to include the word smart, but smart in the terms exactly of the acronym, which is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And another thing to understand was that we are, with these natural-based solutions, what we do is to provide ecosystemic services, and this is our main goal. This is how we work here in India, in Europe, not just in Spain. And this is the main framework we work with, okay? If you ask me for what are the main, for example, challenge we are facing, I have made a question. I think that the main challenge has to do with, of course, we can talk about the need for policies, the need for regulations, and the need for technology in order to measure all the process and to simulate it. But from my point of view as a doer in a daily work, my main challenge has to do with the cultural shift we need all around the world to have, the capability of facing the complexity of the problems in the way they are. In this way, for example, we don't have to invent the wheel. Now we have wonderful experiences. We look at the ancient times. Here in India, for example, we might find very nice solutions, old ones. For example, the step wells we have here, close to Connaught Place. It's just working with water and shadow and coolness. And even it's great because it's an evolutionary ecosystem service, because now it helps us to avoid the noise of the city. So nice. And but also we have had times where we have not done well in the ancient times. For example, in Fatehpur Sikri here, also, which is a wonderful city, but with a huge problem with the water management. So I think that the most important thing for me is this. When I'm working, is this cultural shift we have to do, and the way we have to listen to nature, that needs time, that needs projects in the mid-term and long term, which maybe are not so linked with political needs sometimes. And this is my main point.
Okay, I'll ask you to hold those thoughts, and I'll come back for a few more once we've gone through. So my next question is, I would like to come to you, Robert, and the one thing which I looked at when I looked at your profile is very interesting, is that you've, as a part of Siemens, you've led the energy management transformation project in China. Now, China in India often is taken as a go-to example in many ways in terms of growth, in terms of industrialization, and also a lot of good and maybe not so good from a climate control perspective as well. So what's been your experience there in the context of, say, if you want to relate to that or otherwise in terms of when we speak about green urban infrastructure?
So it's a good question. Actually, answering that will take already at least 5 minutes. Yeah. I think if you look at China and India, there are quite a number of similarities you can see. Yeah? And the one topic is that while China had it to some extent, because you can already see a declining population and already a decline of shift of people into cities, so they had that about 10 years back, you can still see that happening in India. So it is estimated that about 40% of the population will be living in cities by 2030. Now, let's say at least for the non-Indian guests in the crowd over here, that's quite impressive because it means 61 cities with more than 1 million population. Yeah? So think about that, and then think about, let's say, the average energy consumption of an Indian citizen today. It's about just 1/10 of what is consumed in the US. So even if that catches up, you can imagine what the demand for energy is going to be. You're going to have about 10 million cars on the roads moving forward. Yeah? And in addition to this, you have lots of new things coming up. I mean, everyone is talking about Internet of Things that leads to data centers. I mean, just look at the kind of energy data centers consume. Yeah? So if you look at that, then you will see all the people moving into cities, buildings using energy, transportation using energy, energy generation, which is not always great, and then you see also a lot of pollution coming into cities. And then the question is, okay, how do you deal with that? Yeah? So the point over here is not, and China had a very similar problem. They had to clean up before the Olympic Games. Yeah? So the question is, how do you have air to breathe and still allow for growth? And the answer to that, from my perspective, is actually deploying technology. Yeah? Because technology allows for sustainability. Sustainability does not need to slow down, but it just means that we have to accelerate innovation. Yeah? And in context of sustainable or green infrastructure, the point over there is you're looking at decarbonization of energy. There's a lot you can look at, the integration of renewable sources, etc. But also shifting, let's say, some consumers of fossil fuels to electric energy, like transportation, or let's say in India, typically cooking, or let's say other sources. You have all the DG sets running as a backup supply for energy. Those can be shifted to electricity. Energy efficiency is a very critical topic as well, because if you save energy, then you don't need to consume so much. So this is, of course, a very important topic, and we have done a number of projects for vast variety of buildings, including hotels similar to this one over here, and just by energy efficiency, the payback for these kind of buildings is between 1 to 2 years. So it makes absolute sense. So it's not a question of cost, because here actually there's no contradiction between sustainability and profitability. Both is possible. The other aspect is, of course, how do you use resources efficiently? Yeah? So it's not only energy efficiency, but taking the existing resources and maximizing their usage. And that means extending the life cycle of assets, for example, and here IT can support. And then finally, you brought up the topic of COVID in the beginning, which connects us all. I mean, in the end of the day, it is also about how people actually live in urban infrastructure, which makes it sustainable, and I think there a certain people centricity is going to be very important. Yeah? So from my perspective, if you look at what is the future of urban infrastructure, then to summarize it very to 2 simple words, I think it's going to be all electric and digital. Yeah? Meaning the shift of lots of fossil-based fuels to electricity as a source, of course, that has to be produced in a green manner. And digital, because digital will help actually optimize the use of this energy, collect data, so that based on this data, existing infrastructure can be optimized. These are topics which are going to play a very important role. And I just want to give you two examples of how this has been done. One European example, because we're looking today at conclave between Europe and India. So in a small city in Austria, a city called Aspern, by connecting what we call smart buildings with a smart grid, that means energy efficient buildings, lots of sensors in them, with the grid, etc., we were able to cut down the energy consumption of that city by 70%. And that's without decarbonization. So if you can do that, then that helps a lot. And I'll give you a second example, actually something we are doing here in India. It's called EMAS. EMAS is now not a special cheese variety or something. It is e-mobility as a service. And if you look at a number of Indian cities which are now rolling out e-buses, it is actually helping cities convert their ICE buses into electric buses. If you look at a traditional investment into an e-bus, then it's about 3 times as expensive as ICE bus. But if you look at the return on invest, looking at the whole life cycle of a bus, and that's typically about 10 years here in India, then you see that actually the operationals of this and the running of an e-bus is substantially cheaper. So by actually not only focusing on the initial capex of the bus, but looking at total life cycle costs, we are able to actually offer cities in India and also commercial customers together with partners a way of transportation which cuts their running costs and is sustainable. And I'm only picking this example to show that what many people often think is that sustainability has to mean also money. Yes, it does require an investment, but it doesn't mean that in the long run it's more expensive. With that, I would close first.
Perfect, thanks. That's you packed a lot in there. So I was trying to keep up with the notes, so I'll come back. But I just want to underscore what Robert just said. He spoke about the mobility angle, the major block there being the cost, and rightly so, and then the return on investment. I just want to quote some statistics that I have from one of our CBRE reports on the status of commercial real estate rentals. And I'll just give you an example, which actually even I was very pleasantly surprised to read from our research, is that, and this is a study we did last year on the lease rentals on grade A commercial real estate in the 6 large cities. And I'm just keeping it very brief to one sentence. The green buildings, depending on which city you were in, attracted between 11% to 33% more lease rental than non-green building. And I mean certified building, whether they were LEED or well certified. Investors, occupiers, when they come to us, they ask us to source space for them, either for office use or for industrial, warehousing, or any other use. One of the top 3 agendas that they have, the boxes that they want to address is the building sustainable or not? And certification is, of course, one of the ways to make sure that the building is. So, and now, in a country like India, where sometimes we don't have credible data to prove things, even in the field of real estate construction, we have data. We did this survey last year, and we found that buildings attract better lease rental. So these kind of things, like what you spoke about in the context of urban mobility, and in terms of commercial real estate, these can be very compelling data points, stories, to provide that kind of confidence to people who are in this field, whether you are somebody who's consulting or somebody who's developing, producing, or whatever it is. Thanks for that. I will not now quickly turn to Pierre, to you, who's the Managing Director of COWI India. He's in the business of management consulting. So what is it that your customers, when you go and advise them, they consult you, in terms of green urban infrastructure, what's at the top of their mind? What are they asking you? What is the advice you're giving to them?
Well, we are actually consulting engineers, so to that respect, we are advising our clients. And I think the main challenge is to bring the sustainability agenda as early as possible in the dialogue. Because here time is the essence. When you already enter into, let's say, the pre-qualification or tender phase, then sometimes it's always too late to really be able to achieve some things. And later, maybe I can give some examples on how long it takes actually to, in a more systematic way, bring sustainability and green transition high in the agenda with the client, whether it's private sector or public sector, to be able to achieve some things. And moving from, let's say, simple compliance and cost control or cost reduction to actually moving to the next phase when it comes to sustainability. So for that, I can develop that a little bit later, but we have developed some tools so that we enter into a dialogue to be extremely systematic as early as possible and be able then to support our client in this way towards more sustainable and green sector.
Perfect. I'd like to come, and I'm sure the audience is also very keen to learn about some of those tools that you employ. So I'll come back to you in a while after. I think you're in a very different spot, because in my mind, you have to balance between the social cause behind the investment and the return on the investment, if you know what I mean. So in your mind, how do you balance the two when you're looking at opportunities?
Okay, so thank you very much for having me here today. It's been a very star-studded event, all in all, and I'm very happy to be here on this panel. So, you know, we're an investment bank, but we're not a standard investment bank, right? So we're the bank of the European Union. We're fully owned by the EU member states, and we exist to support and contribute to policy objectives of the European Union that they share with their partners. 90% inside the EU, but also 10% outside, and including quite a lot in India. So what that means is that actually we don't see a balancing act between social and environmental objectives and making money. The social and environmental objectives are our prime objectives, right? So here in India, you know, really top of the agenda for us is climate, but also social. And that's why in India, we've invested almost 5 billion already. I think 95% of that, if I'm not wrong, has had climate as a primary focus. Predominantly actually in the urban space. So we've invested in 6 urban mobility projects, so metro rail projects. By the end of the year, I hope I'm allowed to say, we hope to maybe see a couple more. And we've also invested a lot in renewable energy. And we do that firstly from the climate perspective because, you know, I think my colleague here said that, you know, 40% of India's population is going to soon live in cities. And it's the same worldwide. So, you know, the fight against climate change is going to be won or lost predominantly in our cities. We have to find a sustainable way of living together in urban areas. And mobility is going to play a really big role there. So I think it's, you know, transport is responsible, I think, for at least a third, if not 40% of the emissions, and predominantly road transport. So that's why, you know, in India, we've been very focused on supporting the move to clean and affordable public transport. So, you know, really taking those people off the roads and getting them into a form of transport that is safe and affordable, and also, of course, helps us to reduce the pollution that every day I know, you know, I'm really suffering to breathe. The other reason, of course, why we're investing in the urban space and in urban mobility is for people. So cities are for people, and that's super, super important anywhere. but I think particularly so in India, because, you know, all these discussions about India, you know, you're now the fifth biggest economy, and there's a lot of discussion about, you know, taking on the mantle of the fastest growing economy from China. And this is driven predominantly by the people. You know, you have demographics in your favor, but of course India can only fully capitalize on that if those people have access to the education, to the training, to the skills that they deserve and that they need. And then when they get those skills, that they can reach the places of work where they're going to be productive. And that has to be inclusive of the whole population, right? So women, men, and other people, you know, there are also groups who face difficulty accessing. So I think that's something that we really look out for when we're working on these projects. And a lot of our project promoters, actually, I think it's one of the reasons why we're very happy and proud to work here in India, is I think we see the project promoters that we work with also really valuing that. Because for them it's an important value, but also a kind of financial imperative to make the, you know, to make urban infrastructure financially sustainable. You need to make sure that, you know, a broad swathe of the population is able to access it. So I think, you know, last weekend or the weekend before, I was in Agra with our vice president, where we've supported the metro, and it's in Lucknow, and where it's already up and running. And it was really great to see, you know, the majority of people who were riding the metro with us were on their way to or from their place of study. Of course, this is India, so everyone is studying hard even on a Saturday, which our vice president, you know, he was from Belgium, and he was really amazed to see it. So I think that's something that we're very proud of. And then finally, of course, you know, for us, we are a financier. But it's not just about finance, right? So, you know, India is a market-rated economy. You can find money elsewhere. But I think what's important for us is kind of also the interchange of knowledge and ideas. So, you know, we provide our own engineers and technical experts working on every project who have also worked on projects inside Europe and can bring the expertise and the experience they've gained there, but then also bring that back from India, you know, some of the ideas that they've worked on here, and some of the things that our promoters are doing, you know, particularly around multimodal forms of transport and making sure that things are interoperable, is really bringing ideas to us also in Europe. So I think we don't see really a trade-off, but I think we really see that if these two sides work, we have something that is financially sustainable, but is also going to, you know, protect the environment and, you know, really include the people in the urban space and, you know, make their life better. I think that's something that we see as a sustainable proposition for the future. You know, so I think, you know, urban infrastructure for the future, I would pick up on 3 points that I think are super, super important. So I think there's the accessibility and inclusivity angle, which is really at the top of the agenda for us. There's also attention to ESG. So, you know, this is not something we can ever compromise on. And actually, you know, it's a real plus point for us when we have a project promoter that we know is very serious about ESG. That makes it a lot easier for us as an investor to engage. This is something that, you know, everyone is very attuned to. You know, to know that the promoter knows how to manage land acquisition, to manage, you know, biodiversity issues. We've worked in some places in India where there had to be a lot of attention paid to, you know, looking after trees. I think it was in Pune where we were very proud to see that there was not a single tree lost. And this stuff really matters, you know? And then the final thing is really the integrated planning. And obviously, we are a bank that invests in projects, but it's important to us to see that each project sits as part of a plan, you know, for the land use of the city, for the development plan of the city, that it really works together with some of these other transport solutions. We were talking about mobility as a service, some of the other modes to get people to and from the nodes, and also to the kind of overall plan for how these cities, what was it, 62 cities over...
60, more than 60.
Yeah, over 1 million people, how they're going to grow, you know, because unlike Europe, this is new. We have not a blank page, but an opportunity to really build afresh and transform the urban space here in a way that, you know, no longer exists in Europe. And, you know, I feel confident that we can get a lot of that right. So I think the opportunities are really huge. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Nina, and some great thoughts there. I've made a few points that I want to come back to you, but before that, I want to go to Ravi Purushottamam, who's the president of Danfoss India. Ravi, from where you sit at a strategic level, when you talk of green urban infrastructure, what comes to mind in context of what you do?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I kind of wear three hats when I talk about this topic. One, I lead a company which is into cooling and heating, and we sell a lot into the buildings and the infrastructure space. Second, I eat my own medicine. I built a green infrastructure in Chennai, which is 50,000 square meters, and I can also tell you what works in, driving green infrastructure. And third is, I chair the CII Green Building Council as the energy efficiency chairman, and I can proudly tell you India has already built 10 billion square feet of green infrastructure. And this is, there's a rating system already existing on green components, green products that is used in buildings actually. So I'm very optimistic on this topic. Now let me give you a perspective of what is the challenge as far as India is concerned. I think one of the biggest bottlenecks we see is in designing of the buildings. We do not have an integrated approach to designing. We do not have an integrated approach to project management. My own personal experience in building, I remember when we built an infrastructure, a 50-acre infrastructure in Chennai, we had a water consumption which was 165 liters per person per day. That was at the start. That was a design. Now, right or wrong, that was a design. Energy, again, was at some number, but over a period of time, we have cut it down using digitalization and technology and business innovation models to really 1/3 of what it was actually. So I think the narrative about building green infrastructure, we put a lot of focus on the first cost. We need to put a lot of focus on the life cycle cost. And I think this is one big narrative that has to change when it comes to building infrastructure in India. Second, my learning from buildings and infrastructure has been, we audited recently, in the last 5-7 years, over more than 400 buildings in India. And all of these buildings have building management system. They have the state-of-the-art technologies, but only 60% of them are well managed, which means we found out that 40% of them do not have skills to really operate those high technologies actually. So there are multiple challenges as far as skills are concerned as well when it comes to keeping green infrastructure sustainable over its life cycle actually. The third important thing is, I think when it comes to our own experience with buildings, we clearly see that there is a humongous amount of knowledge about putting technology into a building. But what we are missing here is, we are not really integrating different technologies using digital, because everything in the design principle is very silo-centric in a building actually. So in my personal learnings is that green buildings are rated at the time you design a building, but actual rating should be given to a building 3 years later, only after they really deliver on performance of energy, performance on water, and the holistic performance of the building as well. That's been our experience, and I will kind of stop here, but we are already close to 92% decarbonized in our campus as an entity in Chennai. So we have not spent any money extra because we built a green infrastructure. That's the positive part I want to leave you with right now.
Great. So there you have a live example right there. So thanks Ravi for sharing that. Tono, I want to come back to you now. You said something about, and this is, I want to learn from our colleagues from outside of India as to, what are the best practices, what are the systems, what are the processes. You did mention something which caught my attention, which is, do not reinvent the wheel, you said. So, systems, processes, what is it that we can learn, what is it that you can share with the audience, with all of us here, which you think are important to ensure that we have the green aspect of urban infrastructure in consideration when we, to Ravi's point, design, plan, execute, and so on.
Thank you. Well, I think that the main lesson we have had during this process is that first, as I have said, it's an attitude, but second, I have said, okay, we as doers, as planners, we don't need the excuse of climate change to do things better, because it's linked to the way we want people to live and the quality of life. But one says this, you have to be really conscious with the objectives that you want. What are the ecosystemic services you want? You know, you want, like for to say, I don't know, supply of food, you want to work with water, you want the regulation with the technology of the environment, you want support for species, not just even animals and plants, but also human beings. And so it will be easier to understand what kind of corridors, not natural, just one. I was thinking on that before. And also you have to consider the cultural services you're going to offer. It will give you a healthy environment, it will give you potential possibilities for economics regarding the tourism. It will give you sense of belonging because each solution is different. I was thinking afterwards, before when Nina was talking, that for example, thinking in Denmark, you cannot share the same solutions. So, for example, to enhance the pedestrian paths in the city, which has a lot of influence in the climate and in pollution. But you can share the philosophy, and for this case, for example, Denmark in the example of Copenhagen in last century was with young girl one of the most important examples in the world. And finally, we have to consider that, of course, it's a process, very complicated one, that has to do with policies, has to do with regulations, has to do with the need of technology to measure the benefits, both from the human perspective and economics. But also we have to understand that all the solutions that we are working with has nothing with the solutions we have used, for example, in Peru, in Spain, or in India, has nothing to do ones with the others. And the most, as I have said, the most important thing for us is, of course, as Pierre has said, we need to arrive on time. Otherwise, we are not going to offer the services on time. But also, we need time in order to analyze the situation and not to expect the results. This is our main problem. The expectation in 1 week to have the results when we have to analyze a huge ecosystem. Because otherwise, the only way for you to submit the project is just make a copy-paste from other solution you have implemented before, and it's something we fight for, against that idea.
Perfect, and I think what you said gave me a good segue into what I want to ask you, Nina, now, which is, and also you spoke, Nina, about say the Lucknow Metro, and you saw the outcome when you went there. Now there are two ends of the spectrum. On one side, we spoke about policy. On the other side, Robert, you spoke, and Ravi, you spoke about the end result, the measurement, and almost everybody spoke about how technology, digitization can be an enabler. So this is a wide, say, life cycle from policy to execution and thereon measurement, usage. Have you seen any example, India, outside, where you can say that, okay, from the work that you have done, there has been an impact on policy if you were able to address a problem at the policy level, see it through its life cycle, execution, and then probably, like in a project management model, the feedback is very important. You take feedback, you go back, and then you need to realign your policy, procedure, processes, strategy, whatever it is. So any example that comes to mind that you wish to share with all of us?
So, you know, for the EIB, we're the financial arm of the European Union. So we work very closely with colleagues at the European Commission, and you know, here we have the EU delegation based in Delhi, and they are really engaging at that policy level. And I think, you know, the example of urban transport is a very important one because, you know, the incentives for people to use the metro. When we are working on a specific project, right, you know, you can talk about, okay, how much is the ticket going to cost? You know, is there some way that we can subsidize that? But, you know, there are a lot of other factors that come into play. And here we talk about land use policy, right? The policy in terms of, you know, car use. What is the tax being put on cars? You know, in a lot of cities, there are policies that try to constrain people from using their cars, and that can help to tip things to push people into using urban transport. There's a lot of policy work to be done around this kind of interoperability. So I was mentioning the issue of, you know, when people get down from the metro, you know, is it possible for them to pick up, you know, a ride very easily?
The last mile connectivities. The last mile connectivity.
Yes, exactly, the last mile connectivity. And there's a lot of policy questions about how you make that happen, how you enable that, while making sure that it's, you know, it's not a sort of cowboy industry, and that the people who are working for those companies that are doing this last mile connectivity are also looked after. So I think that was kind of a little bit what I was thinking about also when I was talking about this kind of integration. All of those things have to be looked at together. And of course, you know, as a financier, we can only, you know, play our small part. But we do try to work, and I think increasingly so, with the colleagues from the European Union who are really supporting on this. And, you know, they have their smart cities mission. They're engaging with a lot of the cities. And I think there's a lot of twinning being done there. And I think that also links with what Antonio was saying, you know, about learning sometimes from the philosophy, not exactly taking, you know, the same solution that was taken in European cities, but looking at what has worked there and what can be applied, what cannot. So I think absolutely policy is a super important area.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, please.
I just want to make a comment. So while I totally agree with what Nina said, I actually want to pick up on something, let's say the Honorable Power Minister said a few days back at Electrama, where he said you don't have to always wait for policy. Yeah? I think you can see in a number of areas that, let's say, also new business models, yeah, can enable, let's say, green urban infrastructure without having to have a policy in place. Yeah? So I think here it's also a question of actually bringing groups of people together who want to explore something new. And okay, maybe there you need a policy to allow them to do that. Yeah? But the point is, sometimes it is also possible to get things done without policy because it makes business sense. Now, if you talk about urban infrastructure, I mean, we just heard from Ravi building his campus. He put in a green campus, and there was no policy mandating him to do that, correct? There are many other companies around doing that. Yeah? And now, why are they doing that? They're doing it also because there does not need to be a conflict between sustainability and profitability. Yeah? So while having policy is important and good, I do think also that sometimes not having policy does also open opportunities for things to get done. Yeah?
Maybe innovation, that's where innovation lies, right? Yeah. Somewhere outside the policy, maybe. But that, Pierre, I want to come back to you because one of the things that Nina just said also was with regards to, you know, a comprehensive and inclusive approach, you know, in policy not just being unidimensional, and, you know, Robert, you just added another layer on top of it. So you earlier, you spoke about getting involved as early as possible, you know, get in there. And Ravi, I think that also ties with what Ravi said, that, you know, often when we design, we plan, we've not thought it through completely as to where do we want to go. So, and you mentioned certain tools that you're aware of, you've employed. So you want to share some of that with us?
Well, I can actually give you a practical example just to demonstrate or illustrate how much time it takes. That's a project or client we were involved starting 2016. and that was for a large infrastructure, urban infrastructure project. At the beginning, there were absolutely no sustainability criteria in this project. It took us about a year to, along with the client, develop and publish their sustainability development strategy. That was the first step. Then they created actually a position of head of sustainability in the organization. That was by the end of 2017, so that was already 2 years. Then we worked along with them on developing a detailed mapping on the social and economical aspect so that there was informed decision. At the end of 2019, so 3 years later, the client agrees to develop along with us a carbon calculation for the project. 2011, we managed to enter with the biodiversity concern, and a net gain calculation was completed. And then eventually in 2022, CO2 and carbon management was eventually incorporated into the tender document. We are now 2023, where the project is in its implementation phase, so it took, as you can see, a couple of years to be there. What we did for that is to develop a tool which we are still using today, which is sustainability dialogue tool, where, as I said, we are extremely systematic in exploring all and every potential aspect in the project. We are introducing life cycle assessment, of course, and again here it's very much about collecting and analyzing data. But I think it's not only about that, that's also, we all agree that there has been a tremendous improvement in what technology can bring in. But look at today, we are still using very much concrete for all urban infrastructure. How much development took place over the last 30 years in that respect. So there are a lot of research and investment in that area. We are contributing as a company, COVI, in that respect, developing particularly with Korea, some interesting initiatives here. So it's not only about policy, it's very much about dialogue. It takes time. It's about data that we can bring and analyze to have informed decision and support our clients in that respect, but also investing in research and development so that we are again moving towards real sustainability and livable. When we were discussing about, let's say, green buildings, I would personally insist on the livable buildings. I have a recent experience here, and probably I'm not the only one. In Delhi, as you know, there are a couple of weeks where it's pretty cold. If there is no heating in a green building, then employees are staying home. Is that energy efficient? I'm not sure. So having a very holistic approach to the problem, pragmatic, realistic, is also, I think, the way forward.
Thanks, Pierre. One of the things that I think everybody would agree here is the role that technology is and will play in finding solutions of the future related to urban infrastructure and sustainability as well. Probably I would turn to you, Robert, or Ravi, if you want to take that. Now, there could be multiple parts to it. The one part I'm very passionate to discuss is, and your thoughts on this is, what are the hindrances? What are the stumbling blocks? And everybody wants everything yesterday now, but still, especially in the context of urban infrastructure, and you hit the nail on the head when you said, when it comes to our construction industry, real estate industry, the adoption of digitization and technology is still, I would like to say, being a part of it, very low as compared to some of the other fields. So please, what's your thoughts on that?
So let me give you one practical, real-life example that is sitting in India right now. Business model innovation. If you take the two cities of Gujarat and Baroda, there was a government which actually operated mobility as a service and completely disrupted an mobility infrastructure from IC engines to electric buses. And today they operate that model in one state. Now ideally you could replicate this model to all states of India. I have another state where we lose every day 2 million euros as loss in the balance sheet because it would be seen by the political system as completely doing something stupid, and they will lose elections actually, because if they move to that model. Because you have 1 million people who are operating buses across the state of that particular state. So we have been in conversation with the politicians, but they themselves tell us it's very difficult to take that political will to change to mobility as a service. So the point I'm trying to make here is, one, in order to drive sustainability and adoption, there is enough technologies on ground. What we need is more of business model innovation. Like, for example, if you take cooling as a service, as one example, you could do mobility as a service on the EV side as well. Now, most governments today have to restructure. So we as enterprises have to bring some models and present to them where they can move one form of budgets into another form of budgets actually. This is very crucial and very critical because in today's world, you're not getting money on the table. I mean, we did a quick calculation. If India needs to decarbonize the heavy industries, we need to invest 4 to 5% of our GDP year on year for the next 2 decades actually. That's humongous amount of money. Where is it going to come from? We all know there are technologies available. So therefore, my point here is, it is a fine balance between what socially we need to commit as well as what we can afford and what we can execute in the medium to long term. So that fine balance is needed between industry and the government, in my view.
And again, that brings to the fact that, it's, and what Nina earlier you also said, having a comprehensive plan, not let any of these angles, because if there is no political will or there is no policy attached to it, if that may be the case, then it's going to be a lost cause. It's not going to see the light of the day. And that reminds me of some of these examples that, somebody who belongs to the airlines industry was mentioning to me that, and he's privy to what's going on there, India is now buying hundreds of aircrafts. We've read it in the press, our multiple airlines. But he brought out a very unique challenge, which me as a commoner was absolutely unaware of. He said, do you know that nobody's thought about where are they going to park those aircrafts? So airlines are not thinking about, or at least they've not thought about, not all of them, as to where is the space on our airports, most of them. So he was naming one airline, I will not name them, saying that they now have a strategy in place. They actually are working on a plan to make a particular city their hub, where they know there is real estate available to park those aircrafts. Because eventually, if you look at it, if this is not well thought of, there's going to be so much wastage of fuel just working out, operationalizing the running of the aircrafts, the entire network, in the absence of the most efficient, and now this seems like a very trivial problem, parking of aircrafts, but at the same time can have a long-lasting effect and a long impact, big impact on things related to eventually on the sustainability of the whole operation as you're running it. Any other last comments? I would like to take, we left with maybe what, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, or 2 minutes? So any questions, anyone that you would like to ask any of the panelists? Please, sir.
My name is Neeraj Bhattagar. I'd like to know what can be the role of natural gas in the greening of the cities. Does it have a major role to play, natural gas?
In
the green cities?
Anybody?
So I come back to a sentence I mentioned in my topic where I said the future of green or sustainable urban infrastructure is all electric and basically digital. So while it can be an interim technology, and I mean there were lots of discussions also previously on how hydrogen can be used, etc. And normally you can use similar kind of facilities also for natural gas. I think in the long run, it is all a question of basically seeing the most efficient way to do it is electricity, and even in that context, natural gases or hydrogen are only going to be used as an interim topic to balance where you got gaps in that. So that's my personal opinion on the topic.
Okay, thanks. You've been a patient audience. This is the time we were afforded. I'll just want to sum up in a minute. Thanks to everyone. I learned a lot. And I think we can't do justice to a topic like this in just like in an hour. But the main points that I picked up today was, Tono, as you said, it's you cannot transport what is happening, literally what is happening on one part of the world to the other, maybe from somewhere in Europe to India, but what you can definitely transport and transpose is the mindset, the attitude, and the whole, around building green infrastructure. And you don't need an excuse for that. So I love that thing. I'm going to use it somewhere else, that you don't need an excuse for that. Nina, I really like the fact that you spoke about the integration of not just have a unidimensional policy when you are building around green urban infrastructure. You have to have a holistic thinking. And that in India, I can say, being a citizen of this country, is one of the challenges we must overcome. And if there are any learnings from elsewhere, because we sometimes are not integrated in our policy making as well. And then, of course, the execution of it. Different sides of the coin, they're not talking to each other, they're not taking into account. And then one arm says that, yes, this must be done, but it cannot be because it's not sustainable from another's perspective. Robert, you kindly shared a lot on, in terms of, you shared your China example and also how technology and innovation have and will pave the way on offering solutions. And personally what I think, and I hope everybody will agree, is what technology and digitization can offer is provide you real-time actual data that can talk back. Because often we implement a lot of things, policies, procedures, systems, processes, but we don't know the actual impact or the lack of it unless we have something talking back and giving that data, that back to us in forms of data. And Pierre, you spoke about an example which lasted years. So how do you keep your interest? How do you sustain the interest and the momentum on that until you have intermittent and then also final data that talks back to you and tells you whether you've succeeded or not. Are you on the right track or not? So I think, Robert, what you said is technology digitalization will provide that answer. And thanks, Pierre, for sharing that example, which is a success story. But of course, as I said, it had many phases and has many steps to it, which can be adopted in our situation. And Ravi, thanks for sharing your personal example of what you've done with your campus, which is a success story. And also, I loved what you shared about business model innovation, that must be done, and also mobility as a service. So thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, for all your thoughts, all your findings, and what you shared. And thanks to all of you for attending this session. Thanks, and have a great evening.
Mr. Marcus Alholm, CEO, Chempolis, Finland. Mr. Ignacio Rodriguez Pastor, Managing Director, India Técnicas Reunidas, Spain. Mr. Uf Hansen, Chief Executive Officer, M&J Recycling, Denmark. He was just in the other room. Is he here? Oh, there he is. Okay. That's why I was hesitating. Sorry. Mr. Rajesh Srivastav, Executive Chairman, Rabo Equity. You have a change. Okay. Sorry for that. We have Mr. Krishna Kant Jha, CEO, Biomass India. Can we have you on stage, please? And to set the context and give the welcome remarks and take the session forward, I'd like to invite Ms. Seema Arora, Deputy Director General, CII, to please come.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to all my very distinguished co-panelists. I know it's almost the end of the day, so it must have been a very long and very useful and productive day, and we like to keep this panel also very useful and productive. As was mentioned by my colleague, this particular session on clean technology and circular economy, very relevant for India as we are, as you know, we have a huge commitment towards green and decarbonization. So this is a very, very relevant topic for India, and particularly Indian industry has a huge role to play. So I'm delighted to have, experts here who can talk about the subject, give us some concrete ideas, maybe suggest some, important pathways which India and Indian industry can actually adopt in the coming years. Just to set the context, a lot of you will be familiar that 5 years of the circularity gap reports have revealed how linear the world is. This session is about circularity, but actually the world is very linear. We only cycle 8.6% of what we use, which leaves a massive circularity gap of over 90%. This is the potential for the world. And in only 2 years, global circularity reduced from 9.1% in 2018 to 8.6% in 2020. So we aren't doing very well in terms of even becoming more circular. If anything, we are becoming less circular. So the potential is very huge. In India, and as the session also is, description also talks about it, a circular economy path could bring India benefits of almost 40 lakh crores or US dollars 624 billion in 2050 compared with the current development path, which is a benefit equivalent to 30% of India's GDP. And this is an Ellen MacArthur Foundation report that was done a few years back. Now, we must say that in our country, the government of India has been making certain, efforts to integrate circularity into the economy. And I think the case in point is the latest LIFE mission also that has been announced by the Honorable Prime Minister, Lifestyle for Environment. The entire focus is that every individual, every economic unit, every community, and of course then the nation as a whole, makes this as their own responsibility and uses circularity as a principle and makes sure that their footprint reduces. There's of course a lot of regulatory efforts here. The Ministry of Environment has come out with sets of waste management handling rules, and each one of them have extended producer responsibility embedded into them. So EPR on plastics, on electronic waste, and many other things is something that, and battery waste, all of this is a part of the regulatory framework. Also, Niti Aayog has been identifying areas to facilitate transitioning from linear to circular economy. Some of this include, again, solar PV panels, etc., which need to be, recycled after the end of life. So there are certain, I would say, directions that are coming. If the union budget this year, earlier this month on 1st of February, was any indicator, there was a huge, huge focus on clean and green. And you could see that, the government is clearly committed. This is also also as a part of B20, CII, as you know, is the Business 20 Engagement Secretariat for the G20 Presidency of India. Circularity, resource efficiency is a key, pillar in the task forces that we are discussing. So I think this is something that is very important. Just very briefly, I think in CII we have several initiatives. We have, we host 3R awards every year, so we encourage industry to do reduce, recycle, etc. There are awards that we come up with. We have an India Plastic Pact that we host, where voluntarily companies are taking targets to reduce plastic consumption, to do recycling of plastic, to look for alternative plastic packaging. This is more on the packaging side of plastics. We also take on initiatives at the community level through the CII Foundation, where we are working with communities to help them segregate waste and also create newer business models for, circularity in terms of taking that waste back into some way of usefulness into the economic cycle. I think as we speak, this is also, lots of countries, and I think we have representations from Spain, from, of course, India, from Denmark, from Finland. I think the European countries have a huge amount of examples of certain initiatives, technologies, areas where India can actually learn and see how this way of, circularity, way of recycling, newer technologies, innovations can be brought to the country. So I think this panel is clearly going to give us very good insights, and we are delighted to have, colleagues, as I said, from different European nations. And may I start by inviting now our fellow panelist, Mr. Markus Alum, the Chief Executive Officer of Chempolis from Finland, to please share his views. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the kind invite to this important event here in New Delhi. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as many of you know, two Finnish companies, Chempolis and Fortum, are in the process to set up an industrial-scale biorefinery in northeast India, Assam region. This together with the Indian oil company NRL. The main output of that unit starting next year will be 50 kilotons of ethanol, second generation, produced out of bamboo. This ethanol will be mixed by NRL into petrol. By doing this, India reduces the use of crude oil. One biorefinery diminishes CO2 emissions by 500 to 800 kilotons per annum. This improves simultaneously India's national security of supply, which is more and more important. We create jobs and welfare for 30,000 families in the Assam region. Our technology is multi-feedstock. We can utilize technically and economically almost all lignocellulosic materials. In addition to bamboo, we can convert sugarcane bagasse, wheat straw, rice straw, and almost any feedstock, any agricultural residue. The functionality of a variety of feedstock has been tested and secured in our pilot plant in Finland since more than 25 years. As parallel outputs, we fraction other valuable products like lignin, furfural, and acetic acid. The 90% feedstock efficiency enabled by our patented technology is exceptional. Lignin is traditionally used in production of green energy. However, our sulfur-free, non-smelling lignin can be utilized in a wide range of products. For example, car tires are made to 30% of carbon black. This is a fossil material, and it can be replaced by our non-smelling lignin. The market is huge, and our lignin is a drop-in solution for the industries. We do our offer technology for further refineries in Assam as well as in India in general. To make our clean technology offering even more interesting, we can apply it to produce pulp for textiles. CO2 emissions reductions of such biorefineries are similar of an ethanol plant. It is well known that the textile industry is responsible for CO2 emissions bigger than the combined global sea and air traffic. So something has to be done. We are presently far in the process to investigate the commercial feasibility of a dissolving pulp refinery in Europe. In following steps, India will also be considered seriously. There are several plans in our vision. We must accelerate the combat against climate change. We must invest and we must need governmental support. We need it. Regulations, environmental process must be efficient, predictable, and stable. When we invest, we have to have at least a 25 years vision in front of us. India is presently the most interesting area in the world to do business. You grow fast with 6.5% GDP per year. Your age structure is healthy. You are the biggest democracy in the world with 1.3 billion people. Actually, when you consider this is 3 times more than Europe, this is 15 times more than Germany. So we are talking to a serious country. Our experience in India has been very good and encouraging. We do have an excellent cooperation and support from our states. Indian Ambassador, His Excellency Ravesh Kumar in Helsinki gives us his full support. In the same way, also the Finnish Ambassador to New Delhi, Her Excellency Ritva Kokkuronde. This is important for us because implementation of clean energies and circular economy, as we know, require governmental support. Chempolis, our company, has chosen India to be our home market. It is a privilege and honor for us to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Alam. I think you mentioned very, very important points, and I'll come to them when we come to the panel discussion. But thank you for calling India your home market. Yeah, thank you. So next, may I please invite Mr. Rodriguez Pastor from Spain to please give his comments. Thank you.
Hello? Yes. I hear myself a little strange with these mics, but okay, I'll try to get used to it. Thank you, Marcos. I think you want to take the job from us with so many good initiatives, you know, to reduce the need of crude oil. Okay. No, joking aside, I come from a company from Spain. We have a huge representation today of Spain in the room, which makes me very happy. We are very thankful to be invited to this occasion. I mean, when this happens to us, we are always eager to come and share. We have been in India for quite some time, and I'll introduce a little bit what we do. We are an EPC company, engineering, procurement, and construction, with deeply rooted with the process industry. Process industry in the petrochemical and refining and big industrial plants, energy, in energy sector, right? So we're a Spanish company from the European Union, and we came here in 2011. We started our journey, and India has treated us very, very good. I mean, we are fortunate enough. I've been fortunate enough to be almost 12 years here in India. And I wanted to speak a little bit on this forum, on this topic, which I believe is really, really, really important. Although I consider that, you know, we are at 5 p.m., so probably people are a little tired, so it's not the best time to be talking about these subjects. But I think India has a great challenge and a great opportunity in the waste management, in the circularity, right? In reutilizing. I mean, India, you only have to go to Old Delhi or go to Bombay and see how India, the jugaad, right? I mean, we have utilized, and I speak okay, we have used a lot of things, we have received a lot of the things that were waste to others, and we have given them a second life. It's not nothing new to us, right? It's nothing new to India. I believe that we are all talking in these topics, in these forums, about what to do, what can be done, technologies, and so on. Many of those technologies are still very immature, but they're very infant. I was listening, I don't remember her name, this lady from Maersk. People need to be able to afford it. We can develop technologies, but people need to be able to afford it. That's the only way that things can happen, right? And that takes time, because you need to get economies of scale, you need to improve the technologies, and we are working. See, right now our group, Técnicas Reunidas Group, which is a group who has been traditionally linked to traditional waste forms of energy, we are developing in a very small group of the company more than 50 initiatives at the same time, with more than 50 technology centers, universities, companies, and to name only three, because I think they're the most talked or the most related to the ones that we're talking here with the circular economy, I'll list three. One of it, which I believe is very important, India, for example, banned the use of plastic bags, for example, plastics, right? It's a big problem. We pollute, those are dumped into landfills, and they pollute. So we are developing right now a project with one big off-taker, it's Repsol, it's like BPCL, HPCL, or one of the big oil companies in Spain, in which we take the plastics and we call it circular olefins. We take the plastics and we convert it into olefins, which basically is a hydrocarbon, and that can be put in the cracker in the refinery, and you reduce the carbon footprint. So, I don't see if anything is more circular than that. You create plastic from there, and you recycle it, and you put it back, and the cycle never ends, right? So I think this is a very good project that could be used in India, and that we should promote for the big companies to use. And we have to remember, because sometimes when you talk about these subjects, people look at you like, oh, traditional, fossil fuels. Okay, this is transition. We cannot change. We like to have phones. We like to have a microphone, or a pen that is made of plastic, right? So this is something that we cannot avoid. What we need to do is transition into the ways that we can get it in a sustainable way. It's about sustainability. So another project that we're working, I was listening to Mr. Stisdal, which is a hallmark in Europe, for technology, with the turbines, with electrolyzers, and so on. And he was talking about wind turbines. So we have developed a project, and we have that technology ready to launch, in which we can take the wind turbine blades, we can make a process of pyrolysis in a continuous furnace, pyrolysis furnace, right, in which you can then recover the gases so that you don't pollute, right? But you can recover the carbon fiber and the glass fiber, and then you get a oil, right, which is a complex hydrocarbon. And that can be, again, put into the refineries, for example. So this is a way, and this happens how? You don't do it out of the blue. It's because right now in Europe, you're not going to be able to take it to landfills, right? So in India, I see in Bangalore, I come from Bangalore, so you can imagine the applications to the aeronautical industry, for example, right? Which are working every day with carbon fiber, glass fiber, and so on. And the third one, which I think is very interesting, is the waste to hydrogen. This is a process of water gasiv, in which you take biomass, for example. We're going to be competitors. I'm going to compete a little bit, We take that biomass, and instead of producing ethanol, okay, we can do a water gasiv, and it's called, I'll repeat it because the name is a little complex, sorption-enhanced water gasiv with CO2 capture, in which at the end, you take the municipal waste, for example, or you take the biomass, and you can create basically through a process of purification, you can get one substance that can be also used to produce hydrogen, pure hydrogen, through a process, and that can be also valorized. So, there is a lot of technology in which we are working, and we need to continue working in that way. India has a huge potential, okay? And I think, we are here to help I think, like Marcus and everyone here in this room. And anyway, this is a little bit what we do. And any question, Ms. Aurora, you will want to ask, I'll be happy to answer later on. Hmm? And I think we need to share a little the room. I don't know.
Absolutely.
We are a little Spanish. I don't know. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. No, I think, thank you for cheering up the room, first of all, and also thank you for the very, very interesting 3 examples, and we'll come back to the questions, certainly, Mr. Pastor. So may I now request Mr. Hansen, who's from M&J Recycling Denmark, to please give his opening.
Yes, thank you very much. I'll try to, I will talk from here, yes, absolutely. I can see the audience eye to eye here. Are you still awake? Yes? All right, yes I am, exactly. But after my Spanish friend here, we will go a little bit back to, you know, when I thought about this, this session, first of all, I acknowledge it was, it is the midnight session, if you will. So I picked one example which was very kind of, you know, describing for our company. We are M&J Recycling. We are small, Danish. Most Danish companies are quite small, except Maersk and a few others, Vestas. But most of the industry consists actually of niche companies who specialize in something very particular and go deep. This is what we do. We've been around for 160 years. I will not claim that recycling was on top of our agenda for 160 years ago, but it has been for the last 40 years. And the example that I wanted to bring was the example from India, because it has meant a lot to us growing our business, but it also reflects what I think works in circular economy, which is a socio-economic benefit. You gain something on more dimensions. So I will not go into any particular technology, but just try to describe what we did. India has the demographic opportunity, but also challenge of growing, you know, being the world's largest populated country in the world as we speak, basically, and with a trajectory of 250 million people coming into the country, growing the country over the last, or the next 17 years towards 2040. 70% of the infrastructure that will be needed to live in India, a modern life, is not built yet. So imagine how much concrete you will be needing to build your roads, to build your housing, everything. The backside of this is that the cement industry, which is the second largest in the world, is in India. It's running on fossil fuels, and it will probably quadruple the emissions if nothing is done. And now I come to where we tap in, because we are born into circularity, and you have the reduce, reuse, and recycle. We cannot claim the first 2 ones, but we can definitely say that when consumption has been done, we can help recycle those valuable materials. In the case of India and the cement industry, there is a very, very big and untapped potential of actually replacing fossil fuels with a portion of the landfilled materials that are today just being landfilled or dumped. They have methane emissions, there's seepage into the underground, and we don't want the landfill mountains when we go forward. It's not sustainable. But what we have done with most of the larger cement companies in India is to actually start replacing, we call the TSR, the total substitution ratio, of the fossil fuel with the calorific high-value portion of the landfill waste. So it actually ticks 2 boxes. You reduce the landfill, you reduce the use of fossil fuels, you actually save the cost of the fossil fuel, because waste is typically not something that you pay a lot for, if at all, and you reduce the emissions, because there is a certain fraction of that that actually mitigates the CO2 footprint. So in many ways, a pretty straightforward thing to do, because you can talk a lot about technology of tomorrow, but I do think we need to get started. We cannot wait for 5 or 10 or 15 years to have a technology that might work and can be scaled. So I think also we need to tap into technologies that are actually present right now. So this is what we do. And I think, yeah, that was basically my point I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hansen, and we'll love to go a little deeper into what your learnings have been as you've worked with the technology and the cement sector in India. But before that, let me invite Mr. Krishna Kant, the CEO of Biomass India, to please share his perspective.
Thank you, ma'am. Friends, it is 5 p.m., I think, past 5 p.m., right? Almost 15 to 6. All of us are tired, I think. But I'll tell you, we have to wake up. You know why? Why we have to wake up? Because climate change is really happening. It is not now in the research report, not in the seminars. Last year, we have seen what has happened the world over, how global warming has affected energy crisis in Europe, how London has burnt at 40 degrees centigrade, how Portugal was 48 degrees centigrade, how the water in the rivers have been drying in Germany and France, some waters, and hydroelectricity production has come down. So it is time to wake up. Though it is 6 p.m., climate change is really happening, and therefore we are here. This sustainability and green we are discussing. And one of the very critical components supporting this green and clean tech is biomass energy, the biomass technology, which I represent. I represent Biomass India, which was recently formed with the collaboration between Government of Netherlands and Government of India. It is a new initiative. So see the potential of biomass in India especially. We have more than 225 million metric ton of biomass. It's just a rough estimate. And out of that, if we see only paddy straw, 75 million metric ton of paddy straw is burnt. And the result, Delhi and NCR people will all face during November, October. It is gone now. It is March now. But that time, Delhi becomes horrible to stay. And it is told that the 5 years lifespan of Delhi people comes down due to this pollution. But to tell you one great thing, this paddy straw, the 75 million metric ton, we converted it through technology into various products. It will give us a 15 billion euro dollar. So we are losing 15 billion not dollar, 15 billion euro by a carbon credit, lot of bioenergy, biofertilizer, and other methane, so many things. So we are losing actually. So we are not using the technology as Pastor suggested, affordable technology, which people can afford. So that is not happening. There are various reasons for that. One of the major reasons is the actors, rural actors, actually in biomass, mostly in the rural area of India, and the rural people are unorganized. So aggregation of biomass is a very, very critical issue. So what is happening in biomass? All the actors are in urban area. They are putting plants, technology, finance, but the rural actors are left out. So supply chain is a big issue. And I give you an example. Recently in Panipat, last year the Prime Minister inaugurated IOC, Indian Oil Corporation, this ethanol project. It is yet to come to a full potential due to lack of the supply chain. So the problem is in supply chain. We are not focusing on the real actors of the biomass, that is rural farmers. And if you ask me, tell me one magic pill which can solve this problem of rural area, poverty in rural area, it is biomass. Because if we upscale and value add to the agri-waste in the rural area, it will not only give a second income source to the farmers, it will also solve the reducing the greenhouse gases. So we call in Hindi, aam ka aam, guthli ka daam. So for translation for you, it is you get the fruit also and you sell the seed also. So if we invest in biomass, you are not only increasing farmers' income, which is the need of the hour, because it will also accelerate the rural sector, rural economy. In the process, we are also supporting climate positive action. So this dual benefit we are getting in when we invest in biomass. And you see the potential of biomass. Bioenergy, now briquette, biopellet, compressed biogas, or bio-CNG. So for briquette, now government has come with an amendment, Energy Amendment Act recently passed, which mandates all industry sector, a minimum requirement may be met out of renewable energy. So there is a mandate for briquette. This coal can be replaced, fossil fuel can be replaced by briquettes, which is made of agri-waste. Second is biopellet, which government of India has again come, that this policy is in place. Government of India has again come with this co-firing of thermal power plants all over India. I tell you the potential. The requirement of thermal power plants all over India is 96,000 metric ton per day. And you know what is the availability right now? 7,000 metric ton, only 5%. So there's huge, huge potential. 95% is deficit. And it is not happening. Why? Again, the problem of supply chain. Second is your compressed biogas, which can replace the CNG and all natural gas. And you know, India is the third largest importer of fossil fuel in the world. We have imported last year $118 billion. Now this compressed biogas sector, if it is developed, it will reduce our fossil fuel import. So it will not only make us Atmanirbhar Bharat, the pet program of Prime Minister Modi, it will also help the rural sector. And this budget, Government of India has mandated minimum 5% to be purchased by the oil marketing companies of compressed biogas. So there is a market for compressed biogas. And to tell you again the deficit, out of 5,000 units to be set up in the country as per the target of government, only 100 units has come so far. So there's a huge gap. Again, huge gap, 90%. So there's tremendous potential to set up compressed biogas in India. So these are the bioenergy potential we can develop in India with the help of biomass. The second product we are developing right now, technology we are developing, sustainable pulp for your paper and packaging. You see, the forests are ultimately, we can't completely keep cutting forest for this paper and packaging industry. So there has to be some prevention that. So here also the biomass helps us. We are developing that technology for that chemical-free, sustainable pulp and for paper and packaging. So that is under progress, will come out in the market. The third important product we are coming, sustainable board and ply for your furniture and construction industry. There again, this formaldehyde is used in the market, which is very cancerous. So we are coming with bioresin. So it will be replacing the formaldehyde. So it will be completely green technology and clean technology. The fourth is biofertilizer, which is definitely output of compressed biogas. When we produce compressed biogas, biofertilizer output, which can be used for augmenting the soil fertility in the country. And the fifth one is we are focusing on sustainable fiber for fashion. So you have all essential products coming out of biomass. You get table furniture, you get packaging, you get paper, you get energy, you also get fiber for fashion. So all things can be produced out of biomass if we focus on biomass. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jha, for outlining the potential that exists, and I'm sure people on the panel and the audience would be very keenly looking at how we can exploit this potential. But maybe I'll just quickly maybe delve a little deep into some of the points that were raised by my co-panelists, and I think I start with Mr. Alum. I think you mentioned about, the second-generation ethanol from bamboo that you are, bringing to India through your partner in NRL. Now, you also mentioned that regulation should be enabling so that you have a 25-year kind of a horizon. So if you were to just be on the side of the government of India, what kind of regulation would you be looking for?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I think this is for the renewable industries, one of the key questions. And we are not only talking about India, we are talking about Europe in the same way. We have experienced in Europe certain questions about the regulation that, for example, the woody biomasses, are they considered to be good or not good? So we are not really sure about where we are at the moment. From Finland, when I come, we have been utilizing the woods in a very sustainable way, which means also that the wood which is cut in a sustainable way actually absorbs more CO2 than a forest that is not harvested at all. So we see it positively, but then from a European point of view, we can see that certain countries have cut down all the forests. And then they think that we are going to apply the same policies as they have to apply because they don't have almost any forests left anymore. So that's a question, and I'm not saying that in India we wouldn't have any problems, but I think India is a healthy country from the point of view what makes sense. So I am confident that we will have a good investment possibility and regulatory environment in this country. I am sure that India is going to tap the possibilities which are there now in the world and going to take the place which is made free by some other nations by implying regulations which are far enough to be seen for the industry to invest. And that's why we say that India is our home market. That's why we want to invest here. And we see that most probably most of the refineries, either for the ethanol or for the fashion industry, will start to be implemented in India. So it's not that we criticize India, we just prepare, and I'm 100% sure India has understood this importance and potential to tap it, as the others are not doing.
No, thank you. I think you're absolutely right. And if we were to go by the example of the policy that the government has been outlining, especially in the renewable energy sector, and if you were to look at solar, for example, out of the renewable energy, there's a very clear policy direction, there's a clear target. And I think for the other renewable sources as well as for biofuels, bioenergy, there is an evolving policy ecosystem, and learnings from everyone can actually feed into that. So thank you for that. And Mr. Pastor, I think you outlined 3 very important initiatives. Where do you think is the maximum potential for India? I think circular olefins you mentioned, wind turbine blades. And one question I had, and if you want to answer it, I mean, when you go in for pyrolysis, that itself is very energy intensive. So does it really, if you look at the life cycle analysis, does it really have a positive circularity footprint, would be my question.
Well, you have made 2 questions.
Yes, 2 questions.
Okay. Good questions. Yeah, I mean, yeah, this is what I said, no, about pyrolysis, right? I mean, it's a word that in itself is not liked, right? Because pyrolysis means combustion, right? But this is being addressed. At the end, see, all these technologies, what they're trying to obtain is to reuse something that was going to be discarded. You're going to have a byproduct, obviously, okay? But that byproduct, I mean, we are working at the same time in parallel, not only on these technologies, but we're working very intensively on how to recover those gases, okay, that you are emitting, right? I mean, and this is one of the things, and this is one of the things that we're working on as well, which is CO2 capture, right? And the reutilization of the gases of the combustion, right? I mean, all the companies that we're working in you say energy, right? Because let's not forget, I mean, see, we can be all very green, right? But I don't want to name countries, but we can have policies, but I know countries that right now 60 or 70% of their energy is being produced by burning lignite, right? So, I mean, it's not something that we can or we should forget. At the end, we need energy. We need to heat our homes in Europe. We need to cool our homes in India. Or sometimes in India, you need to cool and heat. You know, both. So, or in Spain, right? In which the summer we need to cool, in the winter we need to heat. And this is something that are things that we all need and we require, right? There's nothing we can do about it. It's obvious that there are technologies that are not going to be 100% clean. However, this is one of the things we were talking before we joined here, when we were talking about, for example, e-fuels. Do we believe, or you ask me, and this is not the position of my company, disclaimer, you know, but do I believe personally that the combustion engine is going to disappear? No, I don't think so, right? I don't think so. We can say so, and we can, you know, I mean, and it's not because we're not going to be green, it's because we're going to use different type of fuels. Fuels were going to be e-fuels, right? Who are going to be created by mixing, right? Trying to gain longer chains of hydrocarbons so that we can recover CO2, get those credits, create a e-fuel and put it in combustion engine. Is that going to be perfect? No. But it's going to be the closest to perfect that we can get. And if we can do that and mix it with for example, with the use of hydrogen in fuel cells, with the use of electrical mobility, you know, electrical lithium or whatever batteries that there are, I mean, you're going to get consumptions in, for example, in vehicles, which are going to be very, very low, almost negligible, right? I mean, it's not going to be so clear, you know, the things that sometimes industries, you know, tend to lobby for something. I mean, we are a little bit technology agnostic, is what we normally say, in the sense that we as an EPC company, you know, we work with many licensors, many technology providers, and we see, and we are able to compare, not only in that, in electrolysis and so on. And at the end, like we said, is the people going to be able to afford it? It has to come to that. You know, I mean, it's simple.
Thank you. I think I agree with you. I mean, there is a transition process and you will discover more, but you can't not use what you have now because you want to wait for the perfect. I think I completely agree on that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And Mr. Hansen, I think you've worked with the Indian cement sector. You have a win-win situation where you reduce landfill as well. You reduce the input fuel, which is very expensive for the cement industry. What are the challenges? Why doesn't it happen? Why aren't we reaching and seeing all clear, landfill clear? There's a big one in Delhi here. When do we see it clearing up?
Yes, you're right. No, I think the example is just to illustrate that even small steps matter. I think the ideal is that the landfills will not be there or be extremely limited. And you move not only to waste to energy, but actually to pure recycling. But my point was more to say that, you know, when legislation can be pushed, you can try to collect those valuable parts and try to replace fossil fuels. Those steps are important to get the ball rolling. But the ambition should be, you know, absolutely. The ambition should be higher. But I believe in many small steps rather than waiting 10 years for one big one that might not even happen. So, you know, that's how we see it. And we've seen it in so many countries because we've been active all over the world for many years. And we saw what India is going through happens in so many places. Not in the scale, but in principle.
Thank you. I'm going to now open it for any questions that the audience may have, because I'm very mindful that we are at 6 o'clock. We did start 5 minutes late, 5 or 10 minutes late, but we want to wrap up in time. So any questions, any comments, any observations, please. Can we get a mic here so he can be audible? Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to ask the panelists since the topic is circular economy, your notions about automobile recycling. I think in this budget, we first time heard about the scrappage policies. So what is the way forward on this? I know this will be one of the important topics under circular economy.
Anyone wants to?
For me?
Recycling.
Yeah, but we're not really into automobile recycling, but I have a bit of experience from another segment that I worked in recycling, and I do think India has been moving on the end-of-life vehicle matter for a while. But what I saw was that you really started to invest in auto shredding, advanced separation, the finer materials, especially the non-ferrous part, which is the most rare metals in the automobile. But now moving into electric vehicles, I think it was also brought up here that poses a different challenge. Also one that we are looking at from an M&J point of view, because at some point, it's just like with the wind turbines, at some point the blades will be coming back. You know, at one point the batteries will be coming back. And we need clever ways of avoiding that the mines of the world will be exploited to a degree that is not sustainable. So we need to make those batteries be able to recycle, both in the ways that they are designed, but also in the way that they can be recycled. I don't know if that answers the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hansen. Maybe just one more question. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Neeraj Bhatnagar. You know, we all been talking about projects which have been very large-size projects. You know, doing with the refineries, with the cement plants. But what we really need, you know, if we want to do circular economy, as well as reducing working towards the climate change, we need to scale down these projects, you know, which a normal medium-scale projects can be done by a common man, maybe by the medium-scale sector, you know, not doing $100 billion project or maybe $100 million project. So if we can make a list of such projects which can be done on a smaller scale, that will have a much far-reaching effect on the whole thing, much faster also. So if you're doing NRL in Assam, you know, it'll remain there itself, you know, or we're doing it in a refinery somewhere, getting all the things back. So it's going to take a lot of time for things to reach there and then come back to the common man, you know. This is my take on this. We can work on technologies which are low cost. I mean, not the low cost, maybe which are lower in size, actually.
Thank you. I think that's a good suggestion. Anyone wants to add any observation?
I think you should take it. I was expecting it. I was seeing you.
Anyway, yeah, and I do agree. And it is something that we are working on. And it's, to be honest, now I can talk in the name of my company, all right? We are seeing that there is a shift in paradigm for us as well. We were a B2B company on a large scale, meaning that we used to work for very big clients, right, on a very long span of cycle projects, right? And we see, at least to us, to our group, that we are changing from a project company to a product company, in which we are seeing that, in which there is going to be more need of solutions, right? And I wouldn't imagine myself, for example, we are working right now for a company called Hero. Okay, you'll say, okay, it's a big company, right? But it's not that. It's not a big project. It's a very small project that will be possible to apply to all the small-scale industries. Because at the end, I mean, we don't do retail or we don't do business-to-consumer products. We don't do that. You know, we're an industrial company. We do process integration, process systems, design. So, and we are seeing those projects, you know, in the maybe 5 crore, 3 crore, 2 crore, that in a number of ways. And we are seeing that. We are working into that, for example, into integrating hydrogen into their smelters so that they can reduce the carbon footprint. And that is going to be something that so many industries in India can use. So many industries. So we are seeing a change in paradigm as well, you know, in which we are going to approach clients in that way, you know, as well with the carbon capture. I mean, there are, yeah, still companies are big companies also, yeah, but it's a change for us as well. The clients are changing, right? It's at the end is the market who drives the demand. in the market is nothing but the people. Because sometimes we talk about markets like if there are some entity in the, at the end it's the people, you know, who are driving this demand. And we work for that. We just try to solve problems that the people have. That's it, you know. So it's a very good question. And I think this has to be a way, you know, it has to be a way, yes.
Thank you so much. I know there may be other questions, but we have to move on, and I'd like to just close by thanking the panelists. I think very good insights. I don't want to summarize, but there were very good points that came out. And I'm sure the last point was really important, which you raised, sir, and that triggered the thought process that how do you move from just large projects to actually finding solutions that are affordable, that are inclusive, that are accessible. So find those solutions, get them to scale, and then let's get them implemented. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for a lovely session. Thank you.